Hello and welcome to Lepta TV, Lepta, Lepta. My name is Daniel. If you have been around our channel for any length of time, you know we are a house church ministry. We don't believe it is the only way to do church. We don't say it is the best way of doing church because the best way is God's way, whatever that looks like for each individual church. But it's all about following God's direction and choosing His way always, which means your church might look different than other churches. That's okay. It's God's church. We've got to follow Him and Him alone. In this video, I'm going to talk about something I haven't really brought up on this channel before, but some of you who have reached out to us for coaching and for help have heard about this, and I think it's time for us to finally put this in a Lepta TV video. I want to tell you the story of my first house church. I led a house church 9 years ago now. It was 7 years before we started Lepta. My hope and prayer is that this will be an encouragement to you if you feel called to step out in this type of ministry. If you like this content and don't want to miss any future videos, be sure to take a moment and subscribe. We'd be happy to have you as part of our online family. Join the club, all right? Be one of the fam. So go ahead and do that if you haven't. So 9 years ago, back in 2012, my wife and I moved to be part of a church plant called Reach Community Church. In addition to our involvement there, we felt called to open our home to our neighbors for prayer, fellowship, Bible teaching, and worship during the week. We invited our neighbors over on Thursday evenings, and honestly, we were just excited to see what God was going to do. We had no idea what it was going to look like, what it was going to feel like. And people started coming over, and I was a little bit concerned about no one showing up, so I was super happy. And we had a good number of neighbors who would come hang out with us. Something they all had in common, which I found this really interesting, they did not go to church. In fact, many of them felt intimidated, even scared to walk into a church building, but they were willing to come to our living room and worship the Lord there. And that was my first time, the first time that I realized that there are some, I'm not saying many, but there are some people who will never step foot in a church, but if there was a house church near them, they would go. And that was interesting to me because that didn't really fit in the box of what we might normally think is the case. I would typically prepare Bible teaching, we would fellowship, eat food, sing, and pray for one another. It was really casual. People felt comfortable and would open up. It was such a special atmosphere. God was blessing it, and it was amazing. It opened all these opportunities to share the hope and love of Christ with our neighbors and honestly to become really good friends with them. I not only was their friend, I was their pastor, and in times of crisis, they would reach out to me. I was there for them. It was really incredible, and people always knew they were welcome, and we began to see change in some of them and in ourselves because God was in our midst. He was moving in our midst. He was so faithful, and it was awesome. It was exciting. Now, I didn't look at it as a house church, okay? But that was exactly what God was building in our home. He built a house church right in our living room. We had no legal paperwork. There was no name for it, okay? There was no church website. We had no Facebook page, no social media. Just like we see in the New Testament, okay, in Acts 2:42, Acts 5:42, all right, you may know these verses, you may not, Acts 20:20, Colossians 4:15, Romans 16, and elsewhere. We were a church that gathered in our home, and we saw people who never would have imagined they would even step foot in a church, walking into our home and encountering God in our living room, it was exciting. We were reaching people that no one else was reaching. And none of them were open to going to church until there was an environment open to them outside of the traditional church bubble, which that's the heart of church planting, isn't it? Reaching unreached peoples. Now, this next part is embarrassing to admit. All right. I was still stuck in the mentality that church thrives best in a building, not a home. While I knew there were churches that permanently stayed in a home and that the clearest examples of church in the New Testament all describe house churches, I still felt like meeting in a building was better. Okay. So when an opportunity opened up to use office space that was really generously offered by the church plant we moved to help start, we moved our house church gatherings to a building. And to my shock, and this is the absolute truth, it killed it. The first week, attendance was okay, but then it died out. The building killed it. People assume a building is always better. It's assumed that a building is always God's plan. Oh, brother, just wait until you're in a building. Sometimes that is God's plan. Other times it isn't. You just have to follow God's leading. That's what it's all about. And with our first house church, moving to a building literally killed it. I mean, people stopped coming. The meetings themselves even changed, okay? Even trying to do the same things, it was completely different. There was something special about a home. There was something special about meeting in a living room, and it was lost. Looking back, I never even asked God if we should move the gatherings. I just assumed, hey, a building would be better. And that was a mistake for us. I take full responsibility for that. I stepped out without God's clearance. Never move to a building unless God tells you to. It's His church, and it's up to Him. It isn't your decision, it's His. Even if people pressure you, which in our experience, you will have people pressure you, it's not even your decision. It never will be your decision. It's never been up to you. It never will be up to you. It's God's church. You have got to follow Him. So we moved our nice house church gatherings to this great location, and attendance tanked. I realized our gatherings lost something, and I didn't understand why. I was like, what's going on? And I was stubborn, and I tried to push through, hoping things would change, not understanding why people would be willing to go to a church gathering in a living room, but not want to go to this really nice location that we had prepared. I mean, it was a church office, but it still beat my living room, right? I thought it was a great place to meet. Maybe I'm wrong. We functioned as a much, much smaller group. Often we would literally just have one person until our involvement increased with our main church, and we completely focused our time and our energy there. That chapter ended. And I did stay connected with some of the people and was still there for many of them. But that house church chapter was done. So a big lesson I learned through that experience was this: the setting of a church does matter. It does. There are people near you right now who wouldn't dare step foot in a church, but would go to a living room. That's just the truth. There might not be many, but there are some. And we still follow the same Jesus, you know this, who would leave the 99 to go after the one lost sheep, as we see in the famous parable in Luke 15 and Matthew 18. There are people who slip through the cracks and are unreached, who simply will never go to a church no matter how great the coffee is, how amazing the rock music is, or how fancy the lighting is. But those same people may be curious enough intrigued enough to go to a completely different setting, a home, to encounter Christ. We've met people just like that in our first house church, and years later, we meet them through our ministry here at Lepta Church, and Jesus loves them, and we're going after them. And if we didn't run this kind of ministry, those people would not be reached. They just wouldn't. So, our first experience leading house church was awesome. God used it, and we saw lives changed, even though we had no legal paperwork, no name, no bells, no whistles, no website, nothing. We didn't even have a team to start it up, but we just obeyed the Lord. When we help people start house churches, we know from experience the most important thing is the call of God and a willingness to obey Him. If you've got that, you've got what it takes. You've got what it takes. If God is calling you to lead a house church, that's so exciting. We have resources for you and are here to help you answer questions, stuff like that. Starting a house church can be simple. Okay, it really can. The Lord led us to invite neighbors and hold gatherings in our living room, and we did it. All right, it is simple. We had no logo, no name, no nothing. All right, you can just obey the Lord and start it right up. Very simple. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. It's not easy. And I know firsthand it is not easy. So please reach out if you need encouragement or help, because even though it is simple, it will beat you up. And we'll have more videos about that, I'm sure. There are people around you who won't go to a regular church, but they may be willing to come to your living room. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos. Soon I will be making a video, all right, on how Lepta came to be a house church. That was not my choice or my preference. I thought I was done with house church ministry before we even started Lepta, but I'm telling you, obeying the Lord step by step has been so rewarding, and looking back, we are so grateful for the path that He has put us on, even though it has been tough, and it has been tough. And our first house church taught us a lot of things. It taught us just how much God uses house churches today, and honestly, the privilege it is to participate with Him in that way, and so many other things. It was a great experience, and I hope that's been helpful watching this. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. Please reach out to us. We are here for you. So many people have taken me up on that, and I would love it if you would do the same. We are all on this journey together, and I hope this has been uplifting for you. Blessings to you and your family, and we will see you next video.